Very good morning to one and all. This is Dr. P. Lavanya, working as Associate Professor in MBA Department of IARE. So already we have discussed regarding the cost function, and in our last video you have seen regarding what is cost function, different types of cost, and at the same way we have seen regarding what is short run cost function and the long run cost function. So in these cost functions, as we have seen, another technique what we used in case of business decision making was a break even analysis. So break even analysis, it is we can call like as a financial calculator that weights the cost of a new businesses, services or products against the unit selling price to determine the point at which they will break even. So we can say the 2 points here, that is where it will break even means evenly break. When you want to break anything else, maybe like maybe when you take a stone or anything, we should break between the half means evenly or equitably we should break. So in the financial analysis or the business decision making, in case of decision making, in any organization we refer regarding the production analysis. In the production analysis, we must and should has to wait what are the important things in order to get the profits, means what are the expenditures and the revenues, means cost incurred by the organization and what sort of revenue we are achieving in the markets. So we has to see or weight both the cost and also the revenues. So here we want to break, means we want to calculate these costs and revenues, and we want to find out a point where this revenue or maybe the cost may be equal to revenue. So what we'll call it like a break even, means these two cost and revenue must and should be equally met or equally breaken. So in other words, we can say that break even analysis, it's a point which has to be sold the enough units to cover our cost, means number of units, how many units when we sold in the market, means the revenue generated through the market must and should be equal to the cost what we incurred in the organization. So that is means here the revenue and cost both and must and should be the equal. So this break even analysis which describes is the change of value that corresponded to the just covering one's initial investment or cost. To find out the what is our initial investment, is the cost incurred in the organization covering my initial investment or not, also we can analyze the break even price. So naturally in the manufacturing organizations, when these break even price is that cost what a manufacturer want to produce the product equal to its sales, means in case of the manufacturing units, so when the product cost is equal to the selling price, then it is comes under the break even price. So break even price is oftenly used as a competitive strategy in order to gain the market share. So here we can see that this analysis will help us to gain the competitive strategies, means in the market when we want to grasp or to gain more amount of shares, or maybe when my product want to sell more in the market and achieve the more amount of the profits, one of the plan or tactics or the strategies what the organization play, that is helps in the competitive strategies or the break even analysis. So and this break even analysis we have an important or the vital where it determines the practical application of cost function. Already in the last videos we have seen short run and long run cost function, and in that we have been identified that cost function may be or cost curves may be of U-shaped curves, as you know that they are all U-shaped curves, and in that we have a distinction that we have a fixed and a variable cost. In the fixed cost, where it is limited or the cost is fixed to the certain level, but in case of variable where it will change according to the unit wise. So practically how these costs are played and where the point we can cover total cost or production cost in the organization, we can get through this break-even analysis. So in this function, we have break-even analysis will have three important factors. One we can call like sales volume, cost and profits. So there are the three important things. So it aims, a company will aims to classify the relationship between, means there is some relation or dynamic relationship we can constitute in case of the total cost, total sales volume of the company and what are the profits we have been reached. So here we can identify that sales and what amount of the goods sold in the outside of the market or in the market, and what is the cost incurred. So out of this cost and the sales, what amount of the profit we achieve. So these 3 points take in consideration in case of break-even analysis. So this will also determines that our business must able to cover all the expenses and begins the profits. Means at what point organization starts giving the profits. Means break-even is a point where the total cost covers the initial investment or the revenue equal to the cost. Means here we can identify that after that point where we can achieve, means how many units we can sell, we can get the profit. So that we can identify in case of this break-even analysis. And at the same way, it will help us to operate the conditions when the market or the company break eves, that is, sales reach to a particular point when all expenses attains the level of sales. Means the sales reaching the point where it equal to the expenses. Means the sales and expenses both are equal. So that point we can determine it and this analysis. And this break even is also called as cost volume profit analysis. Already we have seen that these are the three important inputs in this analysis, that there is a cost, volume of sales and profit. These are the three input. So this one we can call like CVP analysis, that is cost volume profit analysis. So it is a method where in the cost accounting or cost accountancy, which gives an impact of various levels of the cost and volumes have an operating profits. Means here what are the level of the cost we have been incurred. Means at particular point of production, what is the cost level involved. So based upon that cost level, how many units we produced, and for that units, how much profits we are achieved. Means first we'll see maybe for 10,000 units. So what is the cost you involved? So for that cost, then we'll see that how many volumes, means how many units for 10,000 rupees cost, how many units you produced. Maybe you have produced 50,000 units. For 50,000 units, what is the profit you have been achieved? So we will visualize here what is the cost involved and number of units produced for that number of the units which are under no profit no loss point and which are above no profit and no loss point, which will find out to get the profits. So here the change in the variable cost and fixed cost affects the profit. So as we know that cost consisting of two types, one is fixed and variable. So if there is a change in the structure of these fixed and variable, that will affect the profits of an organization. So in any organizations where we can see that utilization of this cost volume, that is CVP analysis, is where the organizational members will has to identify that how many units they need to, or that organization need to sell at break even. Means first organization will see that at how many units if I sold, I'll get back my investment. So in order to reach their no profit no loss point, we can comes under these CVP, profit volume analysis. Or sometimes we can reach to certain profit margin. Means organizations will have the targeted profits. So they will keep that within a fixed period of time, maybe for 6 months, 1 year. So they will target some profits. So if that organization want to reach that targeted level, first they should identify this break even and cost profit volume analysis. With that, they can find at a minimum point where the total cost, which is recovering our investment. So after that, how many units if I told I'll reach my targeted profits. So this you can observe in case of analyzing these cost volume profit analysis. So now will comes across the break even means, as we said that BEP. So the firm can achieve this break even in two types or the two dimensions. So one we can say like it can achieve by determining in terms of physical units means volume or output. So how many units we produced, that is output means units what we produced in the organization, means physically at what utilization of this plant materials and all. So at what we are getting, how many units we are getting the volume of output, or we have to determine the in terms of money value, means the second way is we determine in terms of money, that is how many units you have sold in the market, means we can achieve the break even in unit wise, that is number of units produced and sold, and in the same way we can achieve the break even in monetary values, that is money values, seeing that what amount we invested and what revenue we generated. So based upon that we can achieve this break even maybe in the physical and monetary value. So the above picture we can see that break even means no profit no loss point, where we can say that organization reached at a point where the revenue is equal to the invested cost, whatever the cost we invested, that point we'll call it as break even. This is famously called as no profit and no loss point. So what are the main assumptions or some constancies is required in order to achieve this break even analysis? So first of all we'll see that what are the different assumptions we have in case of break even analysis. So in this break even analysis, the total cost within the organization, we have a different types of costs are there based upon managerial use. But here in the break-even analysis, we has to come across only the important components or the main things was fixed and variable cost. So the fixed cost means it remains fixed up to certain level of production. So as we know that rent rates or maybe the fixed expenses where out of some certain period or certain level of the plant, the cost will not be changed. And second one comes as a variable cost. So variable cost means proportionately we can say that it is variable based upon the number of units produced, means it will depends upon the volume of production, means when 10,000 units produce, 10,000 variable cost will be. When you go for another unit, extra charge will be taken for production of that one, means when the volume changes, variable cost will also changes. And the next assumption comes in case of this analysis was selling price per unit remains constant. Why? Because maybe despite of competition or volume of the production, when I want to achieve this targeted level, means to find out the point where revenue and the cost, so compulsorily we must and should have a constancy of selling price. When selling price was differs from one time to the another, we can't get in a particular or a perfect break even point. So that's why, so whatever we want to sell that goods within the market, that goods price must and should be constant. And the next assumption is that there will be no change in the operating efficiency, means the production capacity should not be changed. Maybe when we decided to find the break even for production of 10,000 units, it must and should be fixed for 10,000 units only. So operation efficiency, maybe the plant is having a good efficient, we should not go, or maybe we are having raw materials or more, we should not go for increased production, maybe 11,000 units or 12,000 units. Once when I want to find out this BEP at certain point where the total operating efficiencies of the plants will not be changed. And at the same way, their general price level should not be changed. It means it must and should be also the generally the goods and services pricing level in the market should be constant. And another is the volume of the factor is only one factor affecting the cost. Means the total production what we involve is only one factor must should be affected. It should not have a multiple factors which are affecting the break even. If multiple factors are there, it is difficult to find out the point. Means maybe one effect from one side, maybe another effects from another side. Then we'll get in a we can't get in a perfect break even point. So, and the last of the list, we can say that it is also one of the assumption that volume of the sales and volume of the production both should be equal. Hence, there should not consisting of unsold stock. Means we should not have any unsold stock. Means what we produced, what we are selling, both must and should have a matching. Must and should be equal. So maybe if you have unsold stock, the production units may be 10,000, as we have unsold means another 1,000, but goods went into the market will be 11,000. Means there will be a change in case of send units and produced unit, and it will becomes the price or the selling amount what we get or difficult to calculate this break even analysis. So when you want to find out these break even, that is no profit no loss point in the organization, we should follow these assumptions. So in case of finding within a break even, the two cost what we had discussed above, that is fixed and variable, they are very much important. These are the only two important component. Why? Because in case of the variation what we occur in case of total cost, maybe as we have seen in the cost curves. So TC means what total cost is consisting of total fixed cost plus total variable cost. Then we are able to get the total cost. So in the break even, we must and should get the total cost of the production. So for that, the fixed and variable, these are the two important costs which should be considered. As we know that fixed cost is fixed, and maybe like the salaries, rent, depreciation, energy cost. So where the organization to up to certain level or the level of capacity, they will not be changed. And naturally, as we know, this variable means they goes on increased or decreasing according to the volume of production. Means if 10,000 units, maybe per unit the cost is 1 rupee, it is 10,000. If per unit, when you increase the units, maybe when we produced 11,000 units, the cost will be 11,000 units. Means like raw materials, fuel, maybe labor cost. So maybe the cost will be based upon the number of units. So here the variation comes due to the fixed and variable cost will have effect upon the break-even analysis. So we can represent here a small chart saying that how these fixed and variable, where the point we can achieve the break-even. So where we can see the first column in the of output, and what is for that output, what is the sales or the revenue we are getting in the market. So for that sales or revenue, what is total fixed cost and total variable cost, and we are able to identify what is the total cost. Means here our main assumption to achieve the break even is like where the cost, that is total cost, must be equal to total revenue. So we have to identify that this total cost must and should be equal to this total cost must and should get where it was equal to total revenue. That point we'll consider as a break even. So for that we'll see when the units are zero, not produced. Maybe when we produced or not, we have some amount of the fixed cost within the organizations where we has to keep like rent, electricity charges and some other charges. So for that we have 150 units. When organization produced 50 units of goods and services, then the total revenue achieved means we sold that 50 units for 200 rupees, for example. Yes. So if it is sold for 200 units, what is the cost incurred For that achieving of 200, 150 fixed cost and 150 variable, and the total cost is 300. Means here the revenue is 200, cost is 300, where both are not equal. Then when we increase the production was increased for another 100 units. So maybe 50 units are increased and total we produced as 100 units. So if you produced 100 units, we sold, as the prices will be constant in the market. So we sold the total 100 units for 400 rupees. So for that, as the fixed cost is same, it will not be changed up to the certain mark. So 150 is the as usual fixed cost. But as another 50 units of production was increased, then automatically variable cost will change according to the units of varies. So here another 50 we have attached another 150 as a variable cost, and total variable cost is 300. So we identify here as a total cost of 450 rupees. So maybe we can get that 400 is the total revenue, but what is the total cost involved here is 450. Then we'll see that another point. Maybe they increased another 50 units. Means 150 units we have been produced. So if 150 units are produced, then the total revenue we received from the external market through sales was 600. And the fixed cost will be same, so 150 is the fixed cost. Due to the increase of additional units from 100 to 150, so additional variable cost was taken place, and we got 450 as a variable cost, and the total cost was 600. So here you identify the point that the revenue received from the market is 600, and the total cost, maybe when we clubbed with this fixed and a variable, the total cost is also 600. Means by the revenue is equal to the cost, that is both 600, 600. Then this is the BEP point. Means at this stage, organization achieved or reached the point where it is covering total cost of the production. Means if I produced 150 units and sell in the market for 600, the total cost involved for production of 150 units is 600. So at this point, I am able to get the total cost what I have been inputted in the production. So this is the point or getting of my original investment. Means what I invested in the production, that amount I am getting back at this point. So this is called break even. So we have told that when we want to find out this break even, it says that where no profit and no loss. So here you can identify that organization by selling 150 units, it incurred cost of 600 rupees and it got the revenue from the market is 600, means no profit and no loss. So above this point, how many units will produced or whatever the revenue we are getting, totally we can consider as profit. So as we have seen, it was increased 200 units, means 150 to another 50 units increased. Though the total revenue is 800, but the fixed cost is 150 and variable cost is 600, and we got 750 as a total cost. So the revenue we got is 800 and we got is 750. 750 minus 800, you will get 50 as a profit. Means above this point, whatever the units we go on increasing, organization was able to reach the profits level. Maybe when you go for another increase of 250 units, the total revenue is 1000 and total cost is 900, and here I am able to get 100 rupees as a profit, and so on. So with this table we can analyze that at what point the organization is recouping or getting back the investment, or where the total cost is equal to the total revenue, that is the break-even analysis. So with this we can have some graphical representation on the screen, saying that as we know that here The number of units we can take on the x-axis, and the rupees or amount, whatever the cost we involved, we can take on the y-axis. So based upon that, we can see that already I told that fixed cost is fixed. Variable cost will go according to the change in the production units. So, and we can identify here the fixed cost is constant to a certain level. But only the changeable thing in the production was the variable cost, which is varying according to the production. So, where these fixed and variable cost is meeting by the revenue curve, means we can identify that revenue was increasing through increasing of additional units. When we go on from 50 to 100, 100 to 150, 150 to 200, so 200 to 250 units. When the units are goes on increasing, here the revenue is also goes on increasing. That's why the revenue curve is upwards, sloping it's at upwards. So the meeting or the adjoining points of these changeable, that is total variable cost, met by this revenue curve, that point we'll call it as a BEP, that is break even point, which we can say no profit and no loss point. So here you can identify that the point is called as a 10,000 units at 1 lakh rupees, you are getting the BEP. So if we want to produce the goods beyond the revenue, means this total portion, whatever we are having, we'll call it as a loss portion. So above revenue means the cost what we have above that one, we'll call it as a profit portion. Means below the meeting point, below the break even, we'll consider it as a loss. Above the break even, we'll consider it as a profit. So this is the graphical representation for the no profit and no loss point. So with this representation, we can come to some conclusion by this concept saying that when profits means revenue is more, where based upon the total variable cost and total fixed cost, it is considered as profits. Means when revenue is more, what I said that the profit, the point where you are having above revenue cost, revenue point, then that is called as profit point. If revenue plus cost means both equal, the point where here the revenue and the cost both got equal, then that point we used to call it as a break even point. Means where the total variable cost and the total fixed cost both are equal to the revenue, then that we'll consider as a BEP point. And when the revenue is meet below, the cost was below the revenue or less than the revenue, then we'll consider it as a loss. Means the total variable cost and fixed cost is more than the revenue, then that point we'll consider as a loss point. So these are the three interference what we'll get in case of break-even analysis. So by understanding this break-even analysis, the organization have go for a in order to take the decision making. So once the organization want to go for decision making, so first we should see what are the important calculation. Means every organization must and should have these fixed, has to identify these calculations in order to attain the profits. So the important calculations or the assumed things in case of BEP was fixed cost, variable cost, and we should find out the contribution. Next, it is called margin of safety. Break even, what are the things we should can go for calculation is margin of safety, angle of incident, PVP, that is PV ratio, profit volume ratio, and BEP point. So we have the break-even assumption saying that we can go for a simple chart where you can get a contribution, profit, and sales. You have a figure that sales, maybe when you take this point at minus variable cost, you are able to get profits. profits. Yes. So less fixed cost. So sales minus variable cost. You are getting contribution. Less fixed cost. We'll get the profit or loss, whatever may be. So this is called as the statement. So without certain formulas, a simple break even or a simple analysis where you can get is like by calculating the sales minus variable cost, organization will get the contribution. Why here variable cost I am saying is it is only the changeable cost. So if the changing units are got, the fixed will be constant for certain level of production. So after that contribution, so in case of marginal decision makings for managemental use or management decision making, contribution will plays an important role. Once organization got the contribution, then it can estimate whatever the profits, losses, or whatever the units it want to produce, or it can get maybe the desired profits or the desired units to be produced. So unchangeable one is fixed cost, but a changed one is variable cost. So the compulsory we used to get that sales minus variable cost, we are getting the profit contribution. So once we achieve the contribution, fixed cost is common as we have been identified in the above table also, where the fixed cost is common, we doesn't change. So only the change one is the variable cost. So for that purpose, we'll consider only the variable cost. So after removing of the fixed cost, what we have been founded that if it is excess, the revenue is more, then we'll call it as a profit. That is plus. If sales is more, the revenue is more and we got a plus item, then we'll get a profit. If organization got minus or the maybe negative figure, then we'll call it as a loss. So this is a simple statement where you can go for calculation of this BEP or maybe for managerial utilization. The small statement we can undergo in order to get a organization where it reached the break even or profit or loss. So we'll see here these important calculation. The first will comes as a fixed cost. So as we know that a fixed cost is fixed to the certain volume of production. Examples may be like managers' salaries, insurance, where they are fixed to certain range, maybe the plant capacity or maybe overheads. So where we cannot change it. Maybe for example, if you take a rent for 1 month, I'll pay the compulsory the rent. Maybe if I think it is a 5,000, I'll pay 5,000 for 1 month. Until 31st, I won't pay any rent. Only when another month first comes, I'll start paying. Means at certain level, means 30 days, the organization where the cost of a rent is fixed. So like that charges will be called as a fixed expenses or charges. So these are more utilized for utilization of formulating a pricing or fixing of pricing. Means when I know the constancy of the expenses or fixed expenses, then I can go for formulating a pricing policy assuming the variable cost. Means the variable cost may be last year 10 rupees, maybe it will increase another 1 rupee or 2 rupee. I assume that one and I'll go for the formulating of policy as I know one cost, that is fixed cost, definitely. So where the fixed cost per unit will always be fixed. And second one we'll know what is a variable cost. So variable cost means it varies or almost it direct proportion to the volume of production of sales. Means it will changes when one unit increases, 1 unit cost of variable will be added. So maybe like fuel, electrical, materials, consumable stores. So like that, what we'll call like a labor. So 10 amount of 10 people are there, we should pay for 10 people. If 12 people labor are there, we must and should go for increase in the cost, that is 12 people must and should be paid. Means as number of units or the number of the people increases, the variable cost will also be increased. And the third one, what I told is contribution, which is very much important in case of marginal costing or analyzation of this break-even analysis. So contribution means it is a difference. Already I showed in the statement, that is a sales minus variable cost, where we can got the contribution. So it contributes the fixed cost and profits. Means it says when we want to get the profit, we can get like profit and fixed cost also. Means already I showed you the statement where I can come from down to up. So when I add this profit plus fixed cost, when I add this profit plus fixed cost, I can achieve the contribution. Or if I have sales by variable cost, I can get the contribution. Means here the contribution is an important figure where it helps us to identify in sales and pricing policies. Means in order to sell certain units of goods and services, 100% organization requires the selling units. And pricing policies, when I want to introduced in the market different types of pricing policy. Maybe we have skimming policies, penetration policies, cost plus pricing policies. We have a different policies. Once when organization want to change from one policy to the another, when we know the contribution very well. Why? Because here the variable cost, change in the variable cost is identified, as fixed is fixed. No need to bother about the fixed cost. So once by getting this contribution, we are able to implement or introduce or change the pricing policies, and also help us in case of profitability. Means what amount of the profit we want, or different proposals we can submit at how many units, what amount of profit we are getting. Maybe at 10,000, I am getting 50,000 rupees. At 12,000, I am getting 70,000 rupees. So at different proposals, means alternative of measuring or alternative points where we can get differentiated profits could be identified. So in order to get this contribution, so we required a worth of continuing of different productions. So here the contribution means sales minus variable cost, or sometimes what I said, it comes from down, that is fixed cost plus profit. So the third important calculation in case of BEP is contribution. The next break-even analysis having is margin of safety. So margin of safety means how far the organization was at a safe side. Means by production units, how many units it was producing over break-even, means more than break-even. That says that how I am safety. Means the excess of sales over the BEP. Means we are getting no profit, no loss at 10,000 units. The total production units may be 15,000 units. So how far we are safe side? We are having another 5,000 units. Maybe if any cost increase also, we doesn't meet the loss. Means safety in the sense that organization doesn't involve in the loss. So in order to find that point, we will call it as margin of safety. So we can find this margin of safety, that is excess or over of break-even point. So this one we can get in a sales amount or maybe in the percentages form, where you can see or indicate by identifying these profits, this point, we are able to go on decreasing or identify or reduce the result in the loss. So this margin of safety indicates, means when organization is having more margin of safety, a sound business, means a very good business, more profits are there. Safe side, maybe uncertain things happen in the market. Maybe the competitor came with a more price, or competitor came with a variety of the goods. Maybe some of our sales decrease also. With this margin of safety indicate us how good the business was in the market. So the formula for this margin of safety is, we can say like present sales minus break even sales, or we can say the PV ratio, present sales by PV ratio. So when you calculate profit volume ratio also, we are able to identify the break even point. That means margin of safety. When you know this break even point, we can say like maybe we sold in the market 15,000 units and we get the break even at 9,000 units. So 15,000 minus 6,000 is margin of safety, saying that though any difficulties comes, we are 6,000 in a positive manner. So in order to know this one, the organization can have some of the methods or the steps where it can improve the margin of safety. Means if margin of safety is more, the organization was in safe. If margin of safety is less, maybe the organization may not be safe, maybe it is near to get the losses. So that's why the organizations will have some of the steps to be taken in order to improve the margin of safety. So for that, to increase the margin of safety, we has to increase the production. When you produce more amount of the goods and more goods are sold outside, when we has to see the capacity there where the fixed cost must be constant, then automatically we are able to get more amount of margin of safety. And at the same way, increased in the selling price. Once it increases the selling prices, maybe from 10 rupees to 11 rupees, automatically the revenue will be more, and the safe side situation and margin of safety will be more. And another one is where we can reduce the cost, maybe variable or fixed, both or any one cost. When you go on reducing, so the total cost will decrease and automatically we are able to get more margin of safety. And another step is that substituting the unprofitable products with profitable ones. When organization is having a multiple products, then automatically the product which is getting loss will decrease that production, and the product which is getting more will increase that production. Means substituting the unprofitable one to the profit one, we has to be followed. So if you have been taking these steps, we can improve or increase the margin of safety. Next, when these margin of safety we are having, we have to find out the angle of incidence. So angle of incidence means it's a line or angle between the sales line and total cost line at BEP. Means the line where the slide changes in case of maybe you can identify in the figure like the angle. So this differentiation means the ray or the gap what we are having here, that we used to consider it as angle of incidence. Here we found that angle of incidence is very less, but once the profits was increasing, it was being extended, showing that extension of this line, showing that increased of profit. Means here the angle of incidence is that the point where profit earning capacity of the organization, it shows the angle was becoming large or high, then automatical as we have seen like this, yes, 2 rays. So this extension, when it was extending more, here the gap is more, means higher profits, where the organization is getting higher profits. Here when you see the gap is less, the organization is getting less points profits. So these ray, the extension of these help us to indicate what sort of profits or earnings this organization is getting. The angle is small, we get low rate of return and the profits are less. If angle is large, automatically the profits range increases and rate of return will also be good. So these help us to identify the extent of output and sales changed in order to get attained or a required profit. Means this angle of incidence shows us in case of this break even analysis, that it really shows us the extensiveness of getting desired profits, how far we can get the desired profits. So this is also one of the important one relating to the angle of incidence. So these angle of sales or the total cost line, which we can identify in case of break-even analysis and useful for the organization to get a desired amount or the desired profits. So the next calculation we can get in case of break-even is a PV ratio, which we'll call it as a profit volume ratio. So it is one of the most important studying, that is at what volume means for number of units produced. So what amount of profit we are getting. Means for 100 units, what is the profit? What is the volume? 100 units you produced. What profit you achieve? For 50 units, what profit? For 200 units, what amount of the profit? Means the ratios tells us that the profitability of the business where it contribution to the sales of PV ratio. Means contribution to the sales is known as the PV ratio and is expressed this PV ratio which gives an improvement in the total production where the reduction of the cost is possible by increasing the selling price per unit. So here this PV ratio we are able to get in determination of break even and also desired profits. Means maybe when I achieved a targeted profit of 50,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakh. So then I should use that PV ratio, how many units required to produce. If I want 1 lakh units profit, how many units we can produce? If I want 2 lakh units of profits, 2 lakh rupees, how many units we should produce? Means by understanding the PV ratio, that is at what volume, what profit we want to gain, automatically the organization will go for keeping goals or keeping some targets in order to give or in order to attain the profits. So the formula for PV ratio was that is sales by contribution into 100. Yes, and next one we have the break even point. So by calculation of all these, we are able to go for calculation of this BEP point, which refers where total cost is equal to the total revenue. So it is a minimum point or the minimum production point where we can recover the total cost. So here we can see that if sales goes beyond break even, organization gets profits. If sales comes below break even, the organization will incur the losses. So already we have told that break even will be calculated in physical units and rupees. Means in the physically units, when you want to produce contribution per unit by fixed cost, where you are able to identify. Yes. So once we get the break even maybe in the physical units, that the formula is contribution per unit by fixed cost. If I want to get in rupees, maybe in the sales, then automatically contribution by fixed cost into sales, then we can achieve the break even. So with these the calculation of the break even, we can have an important formulas how what are the required in calculation of BEP. With this we comes to the advantages of break even analysis, that it helps in already we know that determination of selling price, and it will also gives us the desired profits. So in order to know the selling price, we has to know what is the total cost. Only once we know the cost plus profit, as we know, when I want to fix the price, cost plus profit, then I'll get the price of a product. If cost is not known, we can't go for the selling price. So that's why it will help us to calculate or determine selling price, which will give us a required or desired profit. And this break even will also help us in fixation of sales volume to cover the return on capital employed. So return on capital employed means what sort of return we are getting upon the invested capital. Maybe for example, if I invested 1 lakh rupees, if the profits whatever we got is 20,000, means for 1 lakh 20 means 20%. So for product, by giving 1 lakh rupees of the capital, we are getting a return of 20% through production of goods and services. Means fixation of sales volume. So how much we should produce, that type of sales volume we can fix on to identify what is the return upon the capital through these BEP point. And this also help us to forecast the cost and the profits and changes in the volume. As we know, forecasting means as we are estimating the demand from the external whim. So if there is any increase in the cost or decrease in the profits due to the competitors or change in the production volume, so these type of things we can forecast with the help of this BEP. And this also suggests, means this break even will also suggest to shift the sales mix. Sales mix means already we have told that if two or three products are producing from a same organization, then one product was giving a very high break even and another is very low break even. Then automatically high break even production to be reduced and low break even products to be increased. Means when we invest more and getting less profit, that type of products we can decrease the volume. If the investment is less and getting more units, more profits, then that type of products we can increase the investment. So here we can shift, means we can alter the sales mix in the organization. And along with that, it will also help us interform comparison of profitability. Means comparing the internally, interform means one organization to the another organization means last year what are the profits I got, this year what are the profit I got, maybe increased or decreased. Means internally the comparison of the profits could be identified with BEP. And this is also gives some advantages relating to the determination of revenues, cost and levels of output. And along with that, we have another important thing relating to this break-even analysis is it relates to the decision making. So the important aid of management, why I am getting where my total investment or recouping or getting back my investment at what point, that is called break-even, is in order to go for different types of strategies or marginal decision making aspects like make or buy products, introducing a new product. So these type of strategic decisions when I want to produce a product or get from outside, then that for that thing I require what is BEP. What I said, if BEP is more, means at a more amount of the cost I am getting BEP, it is better to purchase at a lower price from the market, keep my pack or keep my name on the product and sell in the market. It's over. If my the cost of the material or whatever we have is low, break even is low, at a smaller amount only I'm getting the profit, then I can sell at more price in the market and gain the more profits. In order to go for strategic decisions, organization will go on introducing of these break even analysis. And this is also help us to forecast the long term planning and also the profitability. To maintain the profitability or the long term planning, organization has to go for this break even analysis. So this break even will give a positive strengths. What are the positive strengths? By angle of incident, by knowing PV ratios. So where we can identify what are the strengths and the capacities of the organization. So by understanding these strengths, capacities or profit earning nature, if any future disadvantages comes or future uncertain things, maybe as we know, the external markets are dynamic, means always changing. We can't say that what is going on and what happens in the future. So the competitors are always there to attack us, and different maybe the government pricing policies all are changing. So in this external changing environment, when I know my organizational strengths and profit earning capacity, if any unforeseen difficulties comes, organization could be sustained. So with this, we have some sort of advantages. And along with that, we have some more factors that will increase the BEP. Means break-even point. If you want to calculate a company's break-even point, what we'll call like targeted expenses or the targeted profits. So at how many times the organization can get break-even. So those points can increase or the decreased depending upon the following factors. Means at what point we are getting and how many times we are getting, so that we can increase or decrease by based upon different factors. So one of the important factor is that increased in customer sales. Once the customers was increasing the sales, that is means the product is getting higher demand, then automatically I'll have to increase the product. Means with the new demand I should go to for break even and raise the break even. Means at what point we can get an extra expenses due to the little bit increase of expenses. Also we want to go for large scale of production or the increased production in order to meet the external increased demand once the customer sales was increased. And another one is a production cost. So once when I want to increase the BEP point, then here we should identify that the running of the business, maybe the sale product, or maybe we can say the prices like fixed cost, variable cost, or maybe prices of the raw materials. So what are the existing and what about the future? So if any additional is required, aside from the production cost, we has to incur another like a fixed cost, maybe like rent, warehouses, salaries, employees. So based upon that cost also extinction or decreasing, we can go for increasing the BEP point. And another one is like equipment repairs. So where in case of a production line, always we have the many plants in the organization. Maintenance is required and repairing, overhauling, and total maintenance management is much more important in order to run the machinery on time in a perfect way. So for these, sometimes machinery fails, automatically the production will be stops. So for that basis, here we should take the considering point, or we should be careful relating to the equipment, machinery. Once anything comes, production stops and delays in the production. So based upon that, we should be very cautious relating to the equipment repairs. So these are the factors, three factors where organization should be so cautious. Maybe based on looking these factors, we can increase the company's break-even point. So finally, we have seen a lot of advantages, importance, and helps to the managerial decision making. Along with that, it is having some sort of constraints or limitations. Why? Because the cost function is linear. Means in practice, we can't say that cost is fixed. Fixed cost will also have some changes. So external markets, external elements of production are dynamic and changing. So we can't say that all are fixed, constant, or sale price is fixed, everything is fixed. So due to the cost linear function, sometimes BEP is not possible practically. So it's like we can see in the organization planning pattern, but actually some deviation we can identify. And at the same way, some of the analysis of that break even was we project the future with the help of past function. Means what we are assuming, when I want to increase the BEP point, I'll go and see that last year at what point I recovered the cost. Maybe at the 10,000 units, I go recovered my cost. But this year, I can't say that only at the 10,000 units I can recover the cost. Maybe due to the market changes or internal changes, there may be some changes in the total production pattern. So our assumption of break even is based upon the past functions or the assumptions within the future of a dynamic future, which cannot be a correct one. And we have another assumption like cost revenue profit relations, that is which is a linear, true only to the some range of production. Means what volume of input we are having, what is the cost involved, revenue. So up to small scale production, small size of organization, where we can get in a perfectly BEP. But it is not an effective when you go on a long run process or the long range of production. When we increase the production and the production is more, so we can't get an accurate BEP when we have a lot of changes. Why? Because production increases, the dimensions of the factors of the production, all the factors may be variable. So in that case, it is unable, or sometimes we'll get a negative thinking regarding BEP, unable to get a correct break-even point. So, and another factor we can say like as a profit function, as we know that external markets, technology, management, lot of difficulties, uncertainties, risks are availing. So, by having all these risks, organization looks very narrow, or organization feels very difficult to reach the targeted profits. Why? Because when I am formulating the plan of profit, everything is quite normal. But after that, maybe due to the external changes or the internal changes, the total factors will be changing and unable to get maybe technology. We can't say when it will changes. Management decisions, when the managers will say yes or no, labor problems, so number of things will be involved. So in these situations, it is difficult for the long range organizations to follow the break even or to get these profit volume ratio in a perfect manner. So this is also one of the disadvantage. So though there are one or two limitations of these break even analysis, it is considered as an important tool for the management relating to the finalizing or taking the decisions of profits or the production and volume, how many units to be produced within the organization. So we'll consider that BEP as an important tool for managerial decision making. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.